This is your homework helper, Mrs. Anderson. Today I will help you with Lesson 5, Hands-On. Use models to multiply fractions. Please have your homework page ready and let's begin. Okay, let's look at this example which says find 2/5 multiplied by 1/2 and then write it in simplest form. Now we know that if I take 2/5 and I multiply by 1/2, I can just multiply the numerators. 2 times 1 is 2. And 5 times 2 is 10, and there I have my answer already, which I can then simplify, but we need to model it. So when we model it, we make an array, and I have written, okay, on this one I could write 2/5 on the side, which shows me that there are 5 rows and 1/2 on the bottom. Okay, this is how I do it. I look at the 5 on the bottom and make sure that I have 5 rows. There we go, 1, 2, 3, 4, 5. I have 5 rows. Then I look at the other denominator, and make sure that I have 2 columns. Okay, now I'm going to shade it in. This tells me to shade in 2 rows. Looks like these have been shaded in from the bottom, so I'll start at the bottom. There's 1 row shaded in, and there's another row shaded in. Now I'm finished with this one. Now look at the other fraction and look at the numerator. The numerator says 1. This means 2 columns, and I'm going to shade in 1 of those columns. So I'm going to shade in this column from the bottom all the way to the top. Now I look where the x's are. The x's, this is the part that I'm talking about. When I multiply 2/5 times 1/2, I end up with these 2 pieces, 2/10. So there's 2/10, and now that I have the answer, now I will simplify. So I'll divide by 2, and my answer will be 1/5. All right, let's do another 1 or 2 together. Here it says shade the models to find each product and then write in simplest form. So the model has already been made for us, but I'm still going to put the fraction on each side. I put 1 fraction on the side and I put 1 fraction on the bottom. This tells me when I look at the denominator that I need 2 rows. And this denominator tells me that I need 2 columns. Now I look back at the numerator, and this numerator says 1 of the rows needs to be shaded. So I'll shade in 1 row. Then I look at my other fraction, and this tells me that 1 column needs to be shaded. So I'm going to do 1 column, but I'm going to make my slanted lines go the other direction, which makes it easy to tell tell the intersection or which pieces have gone both ways. So this is my answer. So I have 1 space that's shaded in, and if I count how many pieces in all, there's 4. And I can check it by going 1 times 1 equals 1 and 2 times 2 equals 4. And then I ask myself, can this be simplified? Oh, it looks like this one already is. Okay, let's do this one together. I have 4/5 times 1/2. It looks like 4/5 is going to go right here because I have 5 rows. The denominator tells me how many rows. Then 1/2 is going to go this way because the 2 tells me that there are 2 columns. All right, I'm going to shade in 4 rows. Here's 1 row. There's 2 rows, 3 rows, and 4 rows. Okay, I have this finished. This tells me to shade in 1/2 tells me to shade in 1 column. So I'm going to start here and shade in every piece of this column. And then when I'm finished, I look and see how many spaces have both slanted marks. So it's basically all of them that have the X are the ones that I'm talking about. So I count those up. It looks like I have 4 of them. And then I can figure out how many spaces altogether, and that is 10. So I have 4/10, and I can check it by multiplying. 4 times 1 equals 4, and 10 times 2 equals 10. Once I have that finished, then I ask myself, can it be simplified? And because these are even, it can be simplified. I'll divide by 2, and I end up with 2/5 as the answer, 2/5. All right, let's look at the back. Here we're going to draw models to help us solve the problem. But then we'll also multiply the fractions. We'll do it both ways. So Charlotte spent half of the day shopping at the mall, and she spent a fourth of this time trying on jeans. What fraction of the day did Charlotte spend trying on jeans? So I have 1/2 multiplied by 1/4. So I am going to draw a model. I'll put 1/2 right here, and 1/4 will go on the bottom. I made it a little big. 1/4 will go on the bottom. Okay, so this fraction here tells me I need 2 rows. So here I have 1 row and 2 rows. Then I come here, and this denominator tells me I need 4 columns. So there I have 4 columns. Now I go back to the first fraction, and this time I look at the numerator. I'm going to shade in 1 row. So I'll shade in 1 row. And then I go back to this fraction, and this numerator tells me to shade in 1 column. So I'm going to shade in this column, but I'm going to make my diagonal lines go the other direction instead. Now that I have that shaded in, I look to see right here how many spaces have an X, basically, and it looks like there's 1. Then I can count how many pieces are there, how many sections there are all together, and there are 8. So my answer is 1/8. So here's figuring out the multiplication of the 2 fractions, and here's the model. That's what you're going to do on the rest of this page. Okay, I will do one more with you, and then you can do the rest. Ms. Hendricks is buying a rectangular piece of land that is 2/5 mile on one side and 5/6 mile on an adjacent side. What is the area of the piece of land? When I do area, I multiply the length times the width, so I am going to times 2/5 multiplied by 5/6. So now I'm going to make a model of this, and I'll write 2/5 on this side, and I'm going to write 5/6 down here on the bottom. So I'm going to look at the denominator first. It tells me how many rows I need. I need 5 rows. Okay, so there I have 5 rows. Then I look at the denominator of the other fraction, and this tells me I need 6 columns. Okay, then I go back to the numerator, and this tells me how many rows to shade in. So I'm going to shade in these rows here. There's 1 row and 2 rows. Then I go back to the other fraction, and this tells me how many columns to shade in. I need to shade in 5 columns. So I'll go the other direction. There's 1 column, 2, 3 columns, 4 columns, and 5 columns. Now I'll look to see how many spaces have both of the lines. Looks like there's 10. And then I can figure out how many pieces there are altogether. There's 5 this way and 6 this way. 5 times 6 is 30. So my answer is 10/30, and I can check it by doing this, multiplying the numerators. 2 times 5 is 10, and multiplying the denominators. 5 times 6 is 30. So my answer then is 2/5. Oh, I'm sorry, my answer is not 2/5. That was the side here. But what I do need to do is simplify. So I'm going to divide by, I need to find my greatest common factor. And in this case, my greatest common factor is 10. So I will divide by 10, divide by 10. 10 divided by 10 is 1, and 30 divided by 10 is 3. So my answer is 1/3. All right, students, you're going to do the rest of the problems the same way. If you don't remember how to do it, write down the multiplication problem first, and then go back and watch this section again. Thanks for watching this homework helper video. If you have any questions, feel free to ask me at school tomorrow.